Welcome back again, everybody. Today we're going to be installing a radio into a Honda CR-V. So I didn't pick up these components, my daughter did. I think she may have gotten help from her boyfriend, so we'll see how she did and what we got. So today we have a Boss BV755BLC radio. Looks like it has DVD, CD, MP3, Bluetooth, a USB port, USB charging, SD port, auxiliary in, front and rear camera input. Looks like it's got quite a few features with a rear view camera. I didn't do any research on this, so we'll see how they did. Looks like they got a wiring harness for a Honda 2006 up. Good stuff. Nice. They got an antenna connector. And looks like a trim kit for a 2007 to 11 Honda CR-V. Looks like they did good. She said she ordered in a radio, I was wondering if they actually got a wiring harness and the trim kit, but looks like somebody actually thought of all that, so I'm impressed with what they've got so far. Alright, let's take this apart and see what we got in the box. Oh, it's got a little remote control. That's kind of cool. Instructions, little wiring harness and bracket kit. It's got your license plate, rear view camera, and the actual radio. So, looks like it's got quite a few options for connecting on the back, and it's got a nice size display screen. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is remove this existing radio. So what she has now is a single DIN with a cubby. So I imagine all this is going to be replaced by the time we're done with this. What we have to do is remove this center panel and then remove this panel. And that'll expose the top screws, and I believe we have to somehow remove this panel, and that'll expose a few screws on the bottom. But looks like we got a place to put a screwdriver here. Alright, and from here, pull this out, camera down, there we go, goes forward. Alright, so what we have is a couple screws here. Just going to do these two. I'm going to put the camera down because I have a feeling I'm going to lose those screws if I'm not careful with it. I gotta somehow pop there we go, just pop this out. Like to have it geared to get a little more room out of that. Let me just Alright, and then you see there's two more screws at the bottom here. We'll get rid of those two screws. Okay, so already I see I broke this piece here. So just be a little more careful than I was when pulling it out. Alright. And that's out. Let's disconnect all the butt connections here. 1, 2, 3. So this is the wiring harness that comes with the radio. So this is going to attach to the back of the radio. And then this is the wiring harness that connects to the vehicle. And then I got to splice wires together to get everything to connect. So instead of actually splicing wires from the harness, this just saves that step in case you ever want to replace the radio again or go back to the factory original radio. It just preserves the integrity of your harness. It's just a neater job. I mean, you don't need to buy the harness, but it's not a good idea not to. It'll save a few bucks if you don't, though. Now, this is your antenna. This is your antenna lead, which will eventually tie into one of these wires. Let's see what kind of wires we got today. We have a remote output, parking brake input, 12 volt accessory, antenna output, which is that wire down there, rear left, front left, rear camera power, front right, front left, rear right, front camera power, illumination, reverse input, rear right, ground, SWC input, I'm not sure what that stands for, and the constant. Let me get my multimeter and see how these colors match up to this and start connecting things. Okay, so we got a bunch of butt connectors. You can use other kind of connectors. You can solder them straight to each other and put shrink wrap if you want to do that. Doesn't really matter too much. I got just to crimp the butt connectors together, and I got a multimeter. Alright, so I'm going to check if this yellow is the 12 volt. So I will connect this to here and touch part of ground, and yes, that is a constant 12 volt power supply. I like to splice them this way too, in case I want to add another wire. I can crimp the other side, but that's not going to happen. This is not the proper tool for this, obviously. I mean, I'm just using a tool, not the proper tool. Then I'm going to wrap that in tape just to prevent any accidental shorting. So I got some tape. Trying to find the wiring code for this. To pull up this diagram here, it's got your pin numbers and what the pin number equals. Rear left negative is exactly the same color as well. So, I mean, usually you can match colors up. That works probably 99% of the time. I wouldn't trust it 100%, but if your colors don't match, then you might want to recheck just to avoid a problem. So let's put that on there, crimp that pretty good, and let's tape that as well. Basically, that's what I'm going to do the entire wiring harness here. I'm going to connect maybe the speakers first, and then we'll get to the other stuff in a few minutes here.
Join the positive to negative, but never got this far. From the diodes that I lifted from the black box on my car. With printed circuit board all fine, from days of working double time, I built myself a woman like I saw once in a bar. To find myself in electric lane.
I'm just going to pause here and let you know that these connectors, you can connect them two different ways. You can do like I've been doing, where you put two pieces of wire in the same end. Or you could put, for instance, one wire in there, connected like this, and then the next wire in here, connected like that, and then just crimp them together. That's the more traditional way of doing it. These wires are pretty thin, so it's quite adequate to do it this way. Like I was saying, if ever I want to add another wire to the same connection instead of splicing it, all I gotta do is put a stick of wire in there and crimp it again. Like that's ever gonna happen, but it's that option is there. Okay, so all my actual wires are connected, my speaker wires I mean. The only thing left are these black, red, and orange wires. So black, I imagine, is going to be negative. The orange one is lights on signal, which is going to be the accessory pretty much. Illumination input, lights on signal. Okay, the blue antenna wire, so this one's not cut. remote output, that's for like an amplifier, rear camera power. We're going to get a wire hooked up to that. Accessory is the accessory position of your key, rear camera power, reverse input. And I guess this is your aux cord, perhaps. Everything else is connected here. It's at a point where I could actually plug it in and test to see if everything is all wired up properly, which is probably a good idea. So right away it says to remove these 2 screws before installation, otherwise the disc player will not work properly. That's probably just a shipping screw. Keep things from bouncing around on its way from China. And let's plug this harness in back here. Now if you had actual wired in speakers, instead of doing all these other wires that I just did, you could just plug them right into here. It would make things a lot easier. However, we went through the wiring harness. That option is always there too, if you want to wire it up that way. Okay, let's turn this on, see how that looks. If the accessory wire was hooked directly to your 12-volt yellow wire, then you'd be able to turn on the radio without having the key in the ignition switch. However, there's always that mistake that you might end up leaving it on and come back to a dead battery. So let's test that out. Now it thinks the accessory is on. Yes. However, I don't see a way of turning this off, and there's no way to turn this off. That's not a good idea. Just get rid of this. Alright, so that's not a good idea. As soon as you turn on the vehicle, did I wire something up wrong? It's possible I may have wired something up wrong. Okay, so I just figured out what the MICU wire is for. The MICU wire is what turns the radio on and off. That goes directly to your 12-volt accessory. Put the key in, turn the ignition. Good.
Growth is ultimately limited because there are just so many people.
Cool. All right, that seems to be working fine. All right, let's go wire up the backup camera. So I got to run this wire all the way to the front. I'm going to go underneath the vehicle. I'm going to use zip ties and get this nicely out of the way. Actually, come to think of it, going through the underside of the vehicle is not going to be an option because this tailgate. So I'm probably going to take off this cover, wire it through here, and she has airbags in this vehicle. So this is going to be a challenge to get the wire to the front stereo. This is going to be a challenge. Okay, so I popped the back cover off, took off this trim. I knocked these grommets out. I'm going to try to feed the wire through here, and to where the license plate area is going to be. I gotta find a way to get to that grommet area through the headliner. This is going to be a 2-hand job, otherwise I'm going to snap something. So the lens cover pops off, and then there's these 2 screws. I'm going to undo those screws and then pop that out. So I took that off. Now I can see I can get wire through here. And now the difficult part is going to be somehow getting that wire to the front radio. Well, let's just start with this end and see where that takes us. Wire going through here. I'm gonna trail it through the ground. Now I have a decision to make here. I'm gonna have to cut a hole through here and push that through. So what I do here is cut through there. I'm gonna have to cut through here. So after a little bit of forcing, I was able to get that almost to the end. And then I grab some pliers and try to pull that through. There we go. Nice. So we got one little tear, but not too concerned about it. And then we're gonna try to wire that all the way to the license plate area. So I'm just gonna remove the entire back cover here. That's a 10mm socket. It's just unscrew that. It's gonna make my life a little easier here trying to fish that wire through this cavity here. Okay, I got that cover off. I'm gonna try to get that wire to trail through here. Okay, so I have the wire in the middle of this, and I'm shaking this wire just to help things through, but I don't think it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is feed another wire up there, try to hook onto that wire and pull it through. So mission accomplished. It took me about 2 minutes to fish that through here. I'm just going to tie that to there and try to guide it through. Perfect. Okay, so I just took out this license plate. I'm gonna have to mount that and the license plate to those holes, and I'm gonna have to drill or something. Probably drill a hole up here so that the water doesn't enter into the vehicle and feed these wires through that. You can see if there's an alternate before I actually drill. So if I remove this, no, it's pretty sure we have to drill. I don't see a pre-punched grommet or anything to the back, so our choices are pretty limited. Now the wire is pretty central. It's not to the left or the right, so I'm gonna drill to the left and try to get the wires halfway between this white piece and this base here. Alright, so that's about where I want it. The hole's not big enough. I have to enlarge it a little and then try to feed these wires through that hole. Alright, so I'm gonna have to feed these wires from the outside in. That way all this stuff can be on the inside. I guess that's big enough to feed through. And then I noticed these tags here. So you can cut this white wire if you want to get rid of the distance guidelines. And if your image is flipped, you cut this blue wire and that'll flip the image up or down. First step, let's just guide that through those holes and see what we got. So right here I already see that it's a pretty tight fit. I'm gonna have to remove this trim in order to get things around corners properly. So I have to remove these two nuts and pop that trim off. That looks like it's not a 10mm. It is not. So let me grab a proper socket for that and remove that. Okay, so whatever size metric this is, I don't have. I'll have to use vice grips and take that off. So I removed those two nuts and I realized there's a third one here. Let's yank all that off on the outside. Okay, that trim is off. I'm gonna have to drill that larger. Perfect. I'm going to affix the license plate on here for now. I'm not going to put the trim on in case I have to do something. My next step is to try to get this to the front. So I put on blue gloves, working with the liner. I don't want to get fingerprints all over it. I'm looking at the length of this wire that they give for the rear view camera, and it does look too short. So I'm going to have to not do any kind of corners, just directly from back to front. So that would be about that much wire. And then I'm gonna have to somehow lead this wire to the radio. Looks like we're possibly a foot or two short. If they had make this wire 5 feet longer, I wouldn't have to worry about it, but it looks pretty short. Route number one would have been to try to go along the edges here. In order to minimize my distance, I'm going to try to fish through the ceiling. I've got these electrical fish connectors. I don't know what to call it. Just a fish. I'm going to try poking it through the ceiling to the front and then eventually attach this wire to it and try to get the wire through the ceiling. I don't know if that's going to work. We're going to try this. So I got this going along a path somewhere and it keeps hitting near the front. I keep looking for it. I can't find it. The idea is to try to get it to the front here. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm trying my best here. The wiring up the camera is the worst part of this radio. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing until I poke it through, or maybe I'm gonna go to the front and try to aim it to the back. I don't know. It's difficult here. I removed the center console and the visor, thinking the wire was heading this way. It wasn't. I removed the handrest. That just held over two clips and you just pop the whole thing off, and then I eventually found the stick going exactly where I want it to go. So I'm going to attach the wire to the back, try to pull it through, and then from here I'm going to try to lead it between the window and the airbag cover. Or actually, no, I'm going to try to get between the weather strip and the airbag cover and then try to get it to the dash and then fish it across the dash to the radio. I think that's going to be the most efficient. I'm going to have to tape the end of this to here and just gently pull it through without trying to disconnect it. If things get too tough, I might have to call in a second hand. But we'll see where we get with this. Alright, so I got that taped. I'm going to gently try to get that through. Again, this works well if you have electrical equipment like this. If you didn't have this fish, it would be very difficult. But yeah, I can feel it. It's already binding, so I'm going to get someone to help me here. Okay, so I had the stick going between the beam. I don't know if you can see past my finger there, but there's a beam, and as a pinch point, although the stick went through, the wire would not go through there. So I had to pull the stick out, and I had someone help on this end to guide that through underneath the beam. And we just finished pulling the wire from here to this point here. The worst part is over, and it looks like we do have enough feet to connect to the radio, so it's not a big deal. Again, I wore these gloves so that we wouldn't get the liner dirty. I still managed to get the liner dirty, but not my car. Okay, so I pulled the weather seal down a bit, and I'm going to try tucking that in and following up the weather seal so it's tucked in. At this point I have it tucked into the weather seal, and it looks like there's just barely enough wire. If I do this right, we can get this connected properly, and I'm going to connect it to the rear camera connector, which thankfully is the closest one. Let me wire this through. I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't have the opportunity to drop onto any pedals, and it's in there nicely so that we don't have any interference with normal driving. Okay, so I let it through. It's below the steering shaft, but it's above a wiring harness, and it goes through a few brackets, and it ends up here. And surprise, surprise, I actually have almost 1.5 feet left. I did not think it was gonna be quite that good. So now I'm gonna take the tape off, connect that, and then the reverse input wire is this purple one, and I'm gonna connect that.
Take a driving, Hollywood Boulevard.
I think I need to hook up this rear camera power as well. And now I got to ground this black one and then connect these two wires together, the reds, and lead that to the positive on the backup. This wire is so thin and I didn't prep it for a connector. I'm going to crimp that down. Okay, I'm going to start the hole with a regular bit. Ideally it would tie into another grounding screw, but there's nothing right around here, so we'll just start our... So what I'm doing here is starting a wire, and I'm going to wrap this around it. I'm a little out of breath because it's hot in here. I got my fish wire through here. I'm going to attach this to here, pull it through, wrap around each other, and then just tape it just to be sure, and pull it through. Now, this is not red. Doesn't matter what color your wire is, really. Wire is wire. If you're worried about it, you can put a red wire in there, but it's not going to do anything functionally different than having a black wire. So I'm going to connect these reds to the black. It's technically going to be a positive wire leading to the positive lead, or just any lead on the reverse. Crimp that together, and then we're going to tape that once it's all decided that that's correct. I'm going to remove this lens, which I imagine you undo these, and then the lens cover pops off. And it looks like a 10mm bolt underneath that. Nope, 10mm / Phillips. Okay, so that's off. Now let's just gently work this off. Gotta somehow get a wire to the reverse. I'm gonna have to get underneath all this trim here. So I'm trying to lead this wire back through here, this grommet. Take it through here and try to get it through this grommet here. Okay, so that took a few minutes, but I've got that wire going through this grommet. I've gone back to this point here, across here, through my trim, and it was quite a squeeze to get my arm in here because I didn't remove all this panel. I was able to pop this grommet off, and with my skinny arm, I was able to find that wire. If I had a bigger arm, it would have been much more difficult. I popped a hole through this grommet, so I'm going to lead that through there, and then I'm going to connect it to the reverse wire, and then I'm going to do a test to see how well this works. I'm probably just going to have to use a splice connection. Using the butt connection is not going to be a good idea. So I got one of these connectors. It's this green and black one. How these connectors work is you wrap it around the wire, you don't cut the wire, and then you put the wire you want to tap into the connection, and then you just crimp that together. Put that over that, it's insulated. So basically I think I have all my connections made. Let's try this out. Radio's coming on, nice. Blah, blah, blah. Tuner, let's see if the tuner's on. Yes, working fine. And then if I go into reverse, reverse does not seem to be working. Okay, I guess it just took a minute to warm up, but now it's working. Now let me mount this in here properly, and then we're gonna put everything back together. So I'm gonna find that trim kit. Disconnect those 3 wires, wiring harness, the backup, and the antenna. I think they got a single DIN trim kit, it looks like. Either that or I'll have to modify it myself. Or maybe it just snaps out. Let me see. Hope it just snaps out. So the instructions were as follows. There was a few tabs on the left and right side of this bracket. I just snapped it off with my fingers. And now it wants me to remove this center rib. I guess it doesn't snap out on its own. So a single DIN is just one of these pockets. That's one DIN, and this is a double DIN radio, which means it takes up 2 of these pockets. It says file the edges smooth. Okay, so it's calling for this trim plate to be put over top of this, which it kind of fits, but kind of does not. And then that kind of snaps into this part, which kind of fits, but it kind of does not. All right, so my daughter just bought me a nice Sweetwater pack of beer as a thank you. Not bad. I approve. There's basically two trim rings. I'm gonna see where we go, but I have a feeling we're gonna leave the one off the radio and put the one that came out the bezel, because there's a little more room to play with in here. So this is probably the second worst part of this install is the trim. First part was getting that backup camera. This is proving to be a little more difficult than the last few times I've done trim. I've installed a few radios, but on the frustrating level, this is pretty intense. Jeez Louise, I can do this. Oh God. What? Okay, so I got that trim on. I left off the radio trim because it's too tight, not working. This looks great like it is. I got these brackets on, everything's on, screws are in there, it's nice and solid. Now I'm going to hook everything up here, shove it through the proper area, and then I'm going to fasten out 4 screws. Antenna, backup camera, this rear camera power. I don't know if I need to have that connected, but it seemed to work with it connected. Not sure if I'm doing this correctly or not. I like this dash because there's a lot of room to put those cables and wires back into. Nice, look at that, look at that. All right, so let's just put the dash back together. Let's put the whole car back together and I'll come back to this. Okay, so everything's back together. The dash looks good. All the liners back into place. I did leave some ugly fingerprints here. That's why I was wearing gloves, but I guess I should have just kept doing that because that's not pretty. This comes with the remote, but let's take a look at this. The only thing I did notice is it doesn't have navigation. It's not an Android-based system. So it's got everything you need for a sound system. Once you shift into reverse, it automatically displays your rear view. That's a good looking scene. It's got good view, and then when the reverse comes on, you've got these little lights that come on as well. So yeah, so the most time consuming part of this was wiring up the camera. Second most time consuming was getting the brackets put on that, and then aside from that, everything else was pretty straightforward. I started this morning. I'll have to check the exact time, but right now it's 1:16. I did get slowed down by the filming of this, but started around 9:30. So I mean, it looks like about a 3-hour job. I could have been quicker, but I was filming. Looks all good. Looks good. Good looking stereo. Again, let's go through the features of this. Give you a review of what you got. You got radio, tuner. You can stream your Bluetooth, disc, phone interface, USB, SD, the camera, the AV input, auxiliary in and settings on the menu. Underneath this little slot, you got an auxiliary port, USB port, and room for an SD card. So click camera, no signal detected from rear camera. I guess it needs to be in reverse or something. I'm not sure exactly, but it's also got an interface where you can put a front camera on there. I don't know if it has capabilities to record while you're driving. I'm not too familiar with this radio. I mean, good looking basic radio, and by basic I mean it doesn't have an Android interface to add apps. Looks like you're stuck with what it comes with. I mean, good enough, right?
Ew, do I have to talk to the camera?
Yes, you have to talk to.
I don't want to do that.
Why?
Because I'm awkward.
All right, so it's been a few months since we've installed this radio. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but Miracle has. So explain some of the cool features about this radio.
So we've got Bluetooth streaming. That's what we're on now. CD player. Make phone calls through Bluetooth, USB hookup, SD card insert. Got a rear view camera. See that? Oh, there it is. Oh. Aux input. Radio. And back to Bluetooth.
All right. So, any problems with the radio since you
No,
got it?
not at all. It's been great.
Everything worked perfectly fine.
It's awesome.
Cool. Cool. Happy with it.
Very happy.
Good purchase.
Yeah, definitely worth the price.
All right. All right. So, what's your Twitch gamer account? Oh, okay. Well, what about your YouTube account?
I don't know.
Your OnlyFans account?
No.
All right. All right. So, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Subscribe to my channel. Comment anything below. Anything, any of your thoughts on this stereo system or the installation or whatever, the features of the radio. Please share this video, and I've also got a little Amazon wish list if you want to buy something from my wish list. It's greatly appreciated. Help support me. Give you a little shout out on my next video. Stay tuned. I got other videos. Thanks for watching.